hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, who is our lead solutions engineer. Today, Dion, I believe, has a short demo for you at the beginning, but he is also here to answer your questions. So you can go ahead and type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. Also joining us today, Sarah Mitchell, who's in charge of our documentation, will be here to get you reference material and to answer your questions as well. So let's get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Mute off. Yes,
Mute
I
off.
am.
Fantastic.
Yes, mute
Go ahead and
off.
make you the presenter.
Thank
We'll
you.
get started.
Dynamite. Well, hey, Dave, thank you so much. Missed you last week. Great presentation, though. That was really cool. Really enjoyed it. And I want to say thank you for everybody who's joining us today. My name is Dion McCormick, and we have Dave McCormick here. And we are here to answer your questions. And we're also going to show a little dog and pony show today, so that should be interesting. But if you have questions, please take the time to go to the Q&A section of your GoToWebinar control panel and enter them there. We'll be monitoring those through the presentation and try to get to as many as possible. And we do our best to try and answer them and get the information you're looking for. So today, what I'm going to do, Dave, is just a quick overview and introduction to a feature that's actually been in the product for a while, but I think it's been underutilized and I'm starting to use more and more. So I wanted to share my experiences with everybody. Again, as Alpha continues to progress and grow and develop new capabilities, one of the most important parts is the client-side aspect. You'll see it's even at the top of our product roadmap along that. And obviously, client-side also integrates with all the server-side stuff and behind the scenes to make it all work and to work functionally great for you in the field. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was a feature that's been in for a little while, but it's kind of an extended growing of the UX builder and the power there, and that is the Kanban capability of the list control, which is very cool, very straightforward to implement. And I just want to give you a feel for it today, because I think you will find that it's a very effective user interface tool for many, many different situations, especially situations that we find that a lot of Alpha Anywhere folks are purchasing Alpha to implement. And once you kind of see it, you're going to find it's really a lot of fun. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick demonstration of that at the beginning. Again, if you have questions on that, go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A section. And if you have other questions, we'll have plenty of time to go over those and review those. But just to kind of give a little background, I'm not sure how many people have worked on this, but one of the key things you're always doing is trying to create a user interface for your applications that are extremely effective, meaning convey information quickly, allow people to interact with that information and take actions, and to do it in an intuitive way. And that's super important. That's one of the most important aspects of all is the ability to make it easy and frictionless for your individuals who are using your systems to use the information and interact with the information in your system. So one of the cool areas is called Kanban, and I'm sure a lot of the people here have used them. They're very popular in any kind of dispatch or manufacturing, because you're basically bucketing what things are. If you have a process, one of the most important ways to do is visualize where things are in that process. And you can see this is a very rough example, just kind of a high level here, where you have these different columns with the status of things. And then within that, in this case, they're using a post-it metaphor, or post-it notes, not even a metaphor, they're using post-it notes to identify specific tasks or actions or items and their state of it. So the beauty of this is you can immediately, the human brain can look at this and absorb kind of where things are at. And it's really gets interesting is that not only can you just kind of find where things are at very quickly, but you can also quickly assess how your process is going. Meaning, for instance, if you have a ton of post-it notes in one column, you may go, hey, that column or that process step may have an issue and we need to get in there and look at that. There might be bottlenecks in your process. So the beauty of this is that it allows humans to analyze somewhat complex information, very quickly digest it and use that and make decisions and take actions based on that information very quickly. So what we did is the development team used, actually took our list control and leveraged the list control to produce something like this. And this is an example, and I'm going to show you how to build this to a large degree. We're going to go through a simple, and then we're going to expand it next week because I want to do it in bite-sized chunks. But you'll see in this situation, you have the same metaphor of a process with certain steps, and then you have items in each of those steps. And one of the cool things about the alpha implementation is that you can drag and drop. It's all built into there, items from one sort of status to another. And that is all built into it. And then what you can do is behind the scenes, add your own special sauce to be able to actually take an action on that. Meaning once someone drags and drop it, you can detect that activity and then do something like update a database, send an email, do whatever you want. The sky's the limit, and it's all built into alpha from that standpoint. So as you can see, it's really cool for any kind of process flow data where you're managing things happening in a sequential process. You're able to quickly visualize that right from your data model. And more importantly, you're able to allow the person to interact with it, and based on their interactions, take certain back-end steps to the data. So if people are just updating the status of where things are at, boom, they drag drop, you update a data table. Next time someone brings up the Kanban board, it shows what the results are there. So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to dive into the Alpha Anywhere environment and show you how quick and easy it is to build this metaphor or this capability. And then next week, we're going to dive in and do a little bit more on some of the other nuances in terms of what you can do with it once you've structured the data and put it together in this format here. So as I go through there, if there are any questions, please make sure to ask those questions, and I'm going to jump in there. So first, wanted to make sure, excuse me, Dave, just do a quick process check, make sure my audio is coming through okay.
Everything is A-OK, and I can't wait to see your Kanban demonstration, but I have a question already. Where did you get that graphic, that Kanban graphic? It was like tailor-made for this particular presentation.
Oh, which one, right there?
Yeah, that one.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, I happen to need
Google,
the perfect graphic. That's pretty
Google,
specific there. Yeah.
And the important thing I do when I do Google searches for images is, A, be careful, and don't do them in front of other people, because bad things can happen.
Okay, sure.
You misspell a word and it could go wrong really fast.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
The other issue is, and actually I want to go ahead and show you this too, because we got to be a little careful on this. So I'll go in here and go into there, and I'll just say, I'll go Kanban, and if I could spell, that's part of it. Then images. So you have your images in here. Now, the important thing is that you need to go to Tools and Usage Rights, because some of these are copyrighted, and it's really not a good thing to use copyrighted. So they have these different things here. So I said labeled for use with modification. And boom, there it is right there. And this happens to be on Wikipedia. So Wikipedia kind of scenario. So, you're not 100% perfected. I mean, if you really want to be safe, you go to one of these, Getty images.
You buy the image from someplace, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But, I'm taking a little risk there, but it is marked for reuse with modification. But you can do that right within the tools section of Google. Allows you to pick which ones. So, you can do non-commercial reuse if you're doing it like for a project for yourself or things like that.
Wow, that's actually handy to know. Thanks.
Yeah, pretty handy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm in my alpha development environment. I'm going to use a UX component because that's where lists show. And I'm going to make this pretty simple. This is my UX builder. Always like to go ahead and structure it with, say, a panel card. And I like to put a little panel header just to give a little visualization to it, and put some text box here. Again, none of this is required for Kanban, but I like to do it for presentation here. And I will provide this, if you're interested, I can provide this UX after I'm done, because it is going to use static data, so it doesn't require any data source here. So example, and actually you should read up. Kanban comes from Japanese manufacturing techniques. And it was really during, their manufacturing revolution. They really created this process, this technique to help them quickly, build cars faster or whatever it happens to be. And it just got caught on like wildfire. That's why it's called Kanban, because it was really a Japanese technique. So I'll go ahead and here, I'm going to go Kanban demo_UX. Excellent. So I've got this in there. Oh, did it not save it? Well, oh, the backup didn't get saved. No big deal. Okay, so I've got that here. So I'm going to go here to data controls, and I'm going to create my list, and I'll call this list Kanban. You can call it anything you want. So we start with a regular list control. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and use some static data here. And you'll see this static data easily could have come from SQL. So let me go ahead and click on static data here. And you'll notice we have sample data. And luckily, Alpha has included an example of a sales pipeline for Kanban lists. So it's already, Alpha has already created a sample list for you to even play with and be able to do that. And you'll see it's a fairly straightforward list of data, meaning it's columnar. You have company, amount, category, and item order. And you can see they just have the data, and it's delimited by a pipe character or vertical bar character. So you really just have 4. So you can see if you had this information in a database table, it'd be just as easy to pull it out of a database table. But in my case, I want to make this so it's a standalone list and UX component. You don't need any kind of data controls or anything along those lines. So again, I went to, in here, I said static data, sample data, selected sales pipeline, and I've got my data there. So that's step number 1. And I'm gonna go ahead and set my, there, okay. So you can see it's pulled the field data out of here. We have company, amount, category. So the way to look at this, and this is important, is that and you kind of want to understand your data, but if I go back to our example, here, these are categories right here. These are the columns that things are in. And then the rest of the data can be used within the display of the information inside of that readily with, you can pick and choose, and I'll show you how you can set that up from there. So once I've set that up here, and I go back into here, I am now going to go to my list properties, and I'm going to scroll down here to layout properties, layout type. And you'll notice called column. Now, we have explored before column. Freeform is really good for mobile applications. That's basically where you can lay it out yourself. And we actually even talked about templates, which is really cool, which you can kind of mix of both. It's really neat. You could really get pretty crazy with the Kanban stuff, meaning actually within each Kanban step, you could add like buttons and other stuff to it. It's pretty amazing what you can do. But to keep it simple, we're going to use with a standard setup. But you'll notice there are 3 other types of layout types that are available for a list control. Kanban, which we'll explore today, custom, which you really basically can roll your own, and the newer map one, which we'll also be doing a demonstration that allows you to use maps in list controls, which is really powerful when you're doing geospatial kind of work. So I'm going to select Kanban here. Now, when I did that, you'll notice that it added a new parameter called Kanban layout settings. So this is really important. When you select Kanban, you have to kind of go in and set these settings, or else what happens is it can't really understand. Basically, this is sort of the metadata that tells Alpha how to take that data and then present it in the Kanban form to a style and looking that you would like. And so it's very important when you select Kanban, you have to go into the layout settings and modify it here. So you'll see here, you have a number of different questions. You have a lot of different things. Like you can even change all the icons, the coloring, all these things are really cool. Again, very, very, very simple and straightforward once you kind of know where stuff is, and a lot of control over it, so you can tailor it to look and feel and act the way you want it to do. So I'm going to go here to category field. That's the first thing I want to do. So I'm going to click here. And you'll notice that the category field is asking me, well, here are your fields that's in your raw data. Which is the one I should use as a category? And as I mentioned before, categories are the columns. So conveniently enough, we called ours category, which is kind of nice to do. You don't have to. You can call it like stage or pipeline stage or process step. It doesn't matter, but you just need to link it to tell alpha which category it is. So we'll go category. Now, display here can be either horizontal or vertical. So you could actually have a horizontal, which is like across the screen. So if I go back here, you'll see that this is horizontal here. But there are ways you can do things vertically. Like, so, let's say you had, and this works well, and it depends on your screen real estate. So if you have, a certain amount of screen real estate, you can do kind of the horizontal. But let's say you had 50 process steps. I don't know if you'd really use this technique, but maybe they're not going to fit on the width of the screen. You could also lay them out vertically so that things are presented vertically. And we can actually show that in a few minutes. So you kind of choose which style you want from there. So the order field, this is what order they're in. You can add order information here. Now, default category names. So as you see, we have category here. And the category is so these are your names of your categories. So these are categories, and then those are the names. So I'm going to go in here. Nicely enough, I can say, get the category names from the data. And you'll notice it's grabbing my unique names from the data. It basically does a unique query against my data and says, well, here are the ones I found. So it's closed, proposal, prospect, qualified. And you may want to rechange the order and stuff like that. And it has a lot of information where you can actually, on the fly at runtime, set these category names. So for instance, what's kind of cool with that is that, let's say you had a very complex process that had like 20 or 30 stages, but it was kind of broken into sub-stages or subgroups. You could actually on the fly say, well, I only want to show closed and proposal. So you can give the user a lot of ability to kind of modify the look and feel on the fly dynamically without having you had to code it. It's pretty cool stuff there. So I'm going to click OK. There's sorting of the fields in here. And then we have a bunch of other items here. You can add your own HTML. And this will dive into a little bit more next week, but I wanted to keep it simple today. So again, very important, you select your category field, whatever that column is going to be, pick which way it goes, make sure you have your default category names, and you're good to go. And order field, let's just do it by company. Item order, there we go. We'll just do it on that. So there is an order field that's in that data there. So that's just in terms of how it orders things vertically in there. And so you'll probably often have things in the database done by numeric values, highest value, lowest, up to you, but you can tell Alpha how you want them ordered here from the data that you present. So I click OK. So I've selected my layout type and I've done my Kanban layout settings. So my next step is to go to my list layout. And as you can see, since we selected Kanban, there's nothing in here. And over here, you'll see that we have our different fields here, so I could do it. But very important, you'll notice there's a new item here called Kanban drag handle. So actually, Kanban adds its own little special fields in there that are already pre-made, ready to go, and kind of wired up and good to go. But as always, Alpha wants to make your life simpler. Why work hard when you can have Alpha work hard for you? So I'm going to go down here to predefined templates. We've looked at those before. And you'll notice that since I am in Kanban formatting, I have some examples here. And so I've got pre-made examples or 3 pre-made templates for me to use. And again, templates are templates. You can modify them any way you want, but this allows you to get up and running with just a minimum of work. So I'm going to select the second one because I want to have this on the left. You could have it on the right. You could also do it. And by the way, all these colors can be driven by data, which is kind of fun because you could something's overdue in a certain stage. You could highlight it red. There's, you can really, the cool thing about Kanban is it's a simple layout, but the energy or the information density can be enormous, meaning you can add all these visual cues in there so humans can grab the information and understand it and rationalize it very quickly. So I'm going to select this second one here and I'm going to click OK. And you'll notice it's gone ahead and put in my template for me. And you'll notice it's already put in my Kanban drag handle right here. But super important, it says your field placeholders go here. So this is just some text here. If I were to click OK and show you, everything would have this information. So all I have to do is go right here. I'm going to go ahead and delete that information. And I'm going to go ahead and put in there company and amount. And I'll put a little dash. And since this is templating, This will be replaced on each item by the company name for that field or for that data item, and then amount. And so that means you can use any kind of layout here. You could go out and get your own CSS and HTML. You can include button. I mean, it's really pretty impressive in terms of what you're able to do within the system here. So I've gone ahead and just said predefined layout templates, pick the template I wanted, and then put in the fields from my incoming fields. And again, these are sample fields. You're not limited to this. So if you have like 10 little pieces of information, start date, end date, status, who's responsible, everything else along those lines, you could bring in all that field data and be able to create a visualization in each item to really give you a huge amount of data very quickly. So now I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Let's go ahead and save this. Okay. Now I'm going to go into working preview. And you'll notice now I have a Kanban, but I screwed it up. So it's a Kanban, it's working, but what I did is I have this in a panel card, but I have to just go back in here and say fill container. And this will fill the Kanban. It gets rid of the border box and the title. So we'll go ahead and go to working preview. Now we should see something a little bit better. Voila, I have my Kanban done. So literally, if I didn't want to add any visual, or if I didn't want to add any sort of movement, I could just use this right out of the box to show people where are things in the process. And so you can see it's closed proposal. Oh, I'll probably want to reverse the order, etc., because we really want qualified through that aspect here. So the neat thing though is check this out. It is fully enabled for drag and drop. And I can move things within stages, and all of this is being handled by Alpha. I hadn't to do, as you notice, I didn't write any code or do anything. I can do it. And then what we'll show next week is when someone drags something and moves it to a new location, you can trap that activity and then fire off some action JavaScript and some other things to then take action on that. Because if I let's say I dragged all these into the proposal stage, that's not the way we want it to go. Go design, go here. Well, no actual data was changed, meaning it's a static example. So everything kind of goes back the way it is. But if I dragged here and I modified that data, then the next time I reloaded it from the database or other pieces from here. So as you can see, the cool thing about the Kanban is that it's very straightforward to implement. You get an immediate benefit at the very least of just showing where things are. And in fact, if I want to get rid of the drag and drop stuff, I'm just going to go in here real quick. Let's go to list layout. I could actually just cut this out. I'll reduce the capabilities, but you'll see now I've just got, a list of where I can't drag and drop because it's looking for that particular device. But at the very least, I could show where things are at and be able to show a very nice looking way of presenting information without even adding the interactivity. So you could even start using Kanbans just to show where things are in a process flow and handle it from there. But the real power is having that ability to then interact with the information. So I'll go back here. Click OK, and then when I go back there, now it has that little icon, and built into it, you'll notice when I hover over the icon, it turns into like a little, I don't know what you even call that icon, but it's something that designates that it's grabbable and usable, and now you go from there. And again, we'll cover how to go through and do a few more styling things. Also, we'll do a little bit more in terms of what happens when you drag and drop, how to handle that. But I wanted to introduce you to the Kanban control. So real quick, I'm using static data here, but as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. It's just the most important thing is you want to have some type of category field, which will be your columns or horizontal. Actually, I'll show you that in a moment, or vertical aspects of it. Once you are there, you go to list properties. You select the Kanban and then go into here and select these things here. And oh, I see what's going on. Notice my default category names. Okay, so I want to go ahead, and this is up to you. And again, you can set these at runtime, so you can order them yourself, but I'm just going to go ahead and just change this so it looks a little bit more rational. And proposal there. and it depends on your requirements here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this vertical while I'm here, and I'm going to click OK. Then remember, we go to our list layout. You want to use one of your predefined templates to start you out because it gets it structured. Key thing is it puts in that Kanban drag handle, then sets everything else up, and then you can put in your own fields of data here. And once you go there and go and do working preview, you'll see, notice here, I went to a vertical representation, meaning that it's sort of going across the way, which is, most people are used to that, usually don't see this scenario. But if you had a lot of steps and you wanted to visualize a ton of steps and you didn't have the horizontal space available, you could go to vertical. And again, everything else works the same. I can sit there and reorder these things and put these in, or even say, you know what, that's now in the prospect stage. Rattlesnake, oh, we're back in qualifying process now. Oh, around the horn should be the first one we should focus on, etc. And again, nothing's happening to that data, but we'll demonstrate that next round because I want to set it up with a little SQL background so we can actually update data from there. So that's a quick introduction to Kanban. It is a very, very powerful control. There's a lot of customization you can do behind the scenes to make it work the way you want to. You can change these icons, you can change the colors, you can do many, many different things. And very important, all the power of a list data is available, including, guess what, guys, offline. So you could download this data offline and have it available offline. That will limit kind of when you make changes what happens, but you know, you can work all that out through JavaScript. But all the other things of like how you style fields, the list properties in terms of what you want to do, the layout, you have 100% functionality with layout, including adding your own CSS JavaScript. Basically, since Kanban is not a new control, it's basically we took the list control and enhanced it and added some features. So you essentially get all the capabilities of the list control, now even more with that. And we will cover map in the near future because it's a really fun one too. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. Actually, let me go ahead and make that horizontal while you're doing that. List properties.
Terrific. We actually don't have
oh my gosh,
a ton of questions, but we have a few. And one question in particular has to do with, can you add items to Kanban, which I'm sure you can, but would you mind giving an example of how you do that? It seems to me that, you know, maybe a button and action JavaScript to add to a list control would do it. Do you have to do something special to refresh the Kanban, or is it just?
Well, let's give that a try. So first and foremost, the most likely right now I'm using static dataJSON, but most likely I use SQL. So all I do is I insert it into the SQL and then tell the Kanban to refresh, and boom, that data would now show up on my next call. So that would be it. But let's try. I'm willing to try. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new button in here. First, what I want to do is go in here. Sorry, let's go here. Go into my static data and grab a piece of static data here. Okay. So I'm going to go in my header here, get rid of my return, go down here to a button. We'll say add item. I'm just going to add a fixed item, but you could obviously open this up in a different panel and add some stuff in there. So let's go ahead and add text mode. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use some action JavaScript, or I'm going to use some JavaScript here. So it's going to be a little more code oriented, but the reality is I would probably just use a form tied to a database and insert it into that database. And actually I can include this in my next demo, and then just hit refresh on the list control and be done with it. So I'm going to do this just because I just want to show how we might be able to do it. So I'm going to insert a component method, and there's a nice one in here, which is list object add table row. And I'm going to copy the example and plug it in there. So we'll get there. Okay. So the way this works, and I'll get rid of all this extra, that's more on there, is that basically how it works on there is that you can get a pointer to your list object, then you create a data field, a data array, and then you insert that in, and then the list will insert it into that, or then this data will insert it. So this data needs to match kind of the data in your Kanban. So let me go in here go back in here and grab this information here. So I'm going to cheat and have that available here. Oops, wrong one here. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to go down here and I'm going to go, okay, so I'm going to say company. I'm going to use our great one, McCormick Brothers, coming soon.
All right, coming very soon, yeah.
I know. And then there's amount. Notice I'm tying the amount. And that's going to be a big order.
All right.
Yeah, big numbers, big dollars. Yeah. Okay, category. And so now I have to append this. So I'll go comma, category, and then colon, and then we'll make this also a prospect. And then it's item order, colon, and we'll just do 1. I'm hoping that's, I wonder if that's numeric, but I'll just assume it's not for now. We'll just do that. I might have to come in and make this data to be a 1. So again, how this works here is that we get a pointer to our list control. We create a little piece of data. In this case, I'm hard coding it, and then I add the table rows. So I'll click save this, and go into my working preview. And there we'll go and add the item. Oh, did I maybe have to do a list refresh? I wonder if I need to do that. But more importantly, let me check this again, since I haven't tried this. Go to console. There we go. List object add table row is not a function. Double check my spelling. Okay, list object, list Kanban. Just change that to a 1, see if that makes a difference. Data row. And I'll try full preview. Sometimes should have worked in working preview because it's all using, but I just want to do it here. And I might have just hold it here. Yeah, I've got something going on. I'm not sure why that would be not going, but for some reason, console here. So let's try it one more time. I'll get the answer on that and get it back to you. I wish that worked really soon. Is anybody? Nope, not in there. So I'll go in here. Here's my console. So now when I'm going to run this, which is JavaScript, we'll see. Well, the gods are not with me. So it says it's not a function. So I must have done something different. So I'll have to go.
Well, you could, if you want to come back to that next week, because I know you're going to.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll get that solved too. But I really want to show you probably the right way to do it, which is write it into a data table and then refresh your comment. Right. That's how I would do it. Now, again, that needs to be connected, so there's certain limitations around that. But that kind of combines all the power of no coding in alpha, meaning you have to do very little coding. You don't even need to know JavaScript. We can do it all through Action JavaScript. So I'll come back and I'll find out why this is not working. And let me look at it one more time. Did I misspell anything? Column. Just seeing if I missed a column, but it would normally tell me that. It's something like, it just doesn't like this information there. So see, yeah, there's list Kanban. Yeah, I'll find out and get back to you guys. But that's how you would do it, either through some kind of JavaScript to add it immediately to it, or more importantly, you would tie it to the backend database. Probably the better way to go about it.
Excellent. So here's a related question that, so now that we're thinking about doing another follow-up next week, here is a follow-up question for next week as well, which would be, if in a master detail UX, when the Kanban list is the master, right, and the regular list is a detail, how would you sync the detail list when clicking on a Kanban object?
Oh man, I'd have to look into that. I
know exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's a next week thing. That's there's always someone who wants to take it to another level. I love that.
Yeah. So let me make a note on that. So the idea is, can you combine the concept of a list, of a Kanban, with a detail view conceptual framework?
Exactly.
Yeah, because then I guess you could use just the standard insert record in a list detail view to add those items. You don't have to do it in the way I did, which was a bit of a hard-coded thing there. So list. These are great questions.
I know. Look at that.
Detail view. because you can add a detail view to this thing.
Yeah.
Actually, you want to try? Want to just try it?
Yeah,
It
and
only
while
take me
you're
a
there,
moment.
and while you're
Only take me.
there,
Yeah.
that'll bring us to another question.
Okay.
And that question is, when you're in the list layout, what is the difference between the placeholders with fields and the ones that are just say data?
Ah, good point.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, so I'll go back in before I get into that. And you were saying in the list layout here.
Yeah, exactly. You see, there are fields up at the top, like company, right? But then there's
Right.
something which says data company, right?
Oh, yeah. I believe it has to do to I'll have to find. I almost always just use the data once and present those pieces. But I think it has to do the ability you can actually insert. I think I'll have to find out. I honestly, off the top of my head, I've never really used that. I've been using mainly these pieces here, so we'll find that out. That's
Oh,
a good
wow.
question.
We stumped you on an easy
I
one this time.
know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, excellent. No, that's a great one. Thanks very much. Yeah,
By the way,
I tend
we
to only
have
use the
template
top ones
items, but
too. I never use the ones below. I'm sure there's probably some really important reason to do that, and we'll find out. Okay. Someone asked, could you do inline editing with a Kanban list?
that I'm
Big
going to have
yet.
to, that is, and
See,
it's a
this
great,
Kanban was a can of worms. I don't know if you
I
should.
know,
Kanban of worms
I
is what you've
knew it was
opened up
going to
here.
go
This
down
is
that road.
fantastic. Well, that's all right.
Yeah.
You've got your work cut out for you for next week, which is good.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really interesting stuff. And the fact
Yeah.
is, while I'm doing, I'm just going to enable detail view and add my, oh, I'll show a trick on that. I'm going to ask the experts at the dev team and find out what they have to
Absolutely.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, the experts there. Meanwhile, what I'm going to do is I've gone ahead and added a new panel card here.
Mhm.
And so I can put my controls in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in my list Kanban, I've opened that up. I'm going to say it has a detail view. I'll go to the detail view and I'm going to go ahead and do a field map. Now, what's interesting is that you notice I don't have any fields. I can have Alpha create those fields for me. So by just clicking this button here, which is create new UX controls for all of them, it's going to automatically create those fields, and then I tell it where I want those fields to be. So if I'm actually updating my data, I want some other stuff, I go, okay. And now it's going to create those. And now I have a set of fields here that are associated with that. Now let's do this. I'm going to go over here to other controls. Now you'll notice because I would normally try and use the quick start genie, but since we're kind of doing this from the back end, I have another shortcut. So one of the shortcuts was I wanted to tie my fields here to my detail view, which is going to be here. So I allowed the list control to create those for me. And also, by the way, when it did that, just to let you know, if I go to the detail view, it mapped the new fields to the list control. So everything's wired up. Okay. And in fact, let's just try this and see. Okay. Notice what's happening. So I am able to use that. Now, if I click and drag, so you can see, oh, and interesting, it modified those. It actually, when I click and drag, it did an enter. So I'll have to look at that. Little nuances, it depends on what you do, but you'll notice that as I click these things, it's basically putting those things in there or putting the values. It's linked the item here. So that's kind of cool, but let's go ahead and go here. I'm gonna go to my other controls and I'm gonna go down to actually my define controls. And there's a cool feature called list detail view buttons. So let's say you're kind of building this after the fact and you go, oh, I need to put in the fields and then I got to add some buttons. You can click here. I can select my list and then you can say, for instance, new record and then save those kind of things here. So it will actually create pre-wired buttons for me to do all of the different things we want to do from there. And so now I have my two buttons right here. So I'll move this one up to the top of this row right here. And I'll even make it a little fancier by putting in a panel header. Okay. There we go. And we'll go to my working preview. Okay. So I can click on one here. I'm going to create, let's see, and it's prospect, right? Let me go ahead and copy that. I'm going to create a new record and I'm going to go McCormick. If I could spell my own name. Always the hardest part. Check it out.
Very cool.
Right, and now if this
It's ready to
were,
be synchronized too.
yeah,
Little blue
notice this is
triangle.
saying it's a blue new record. And like if I go here and I change this to AL1 and click save, this one's an edited record. And then if I were tied to a backend data model, I would just say sync or have it auto sync, and all of this information would drive back into the backend data model or database. And then I'd be able, then next time I brought this up, it would be there. I will figure out why this particular piece of JavaScript, I think, just for closure, but you're going to want to do this either through a detail view kind of capability, because the nice thing is you're going to leverage however you're connected in here. The other alternative is to open up, which I'll show you in the UX, and then edit, tie it to a backend database, and then just refresh your list, and it'll show up there. So kind of a couple different ways you can, skin that cat.
Excellent.
Good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do have the other two questions, the data, what's data, yada, yada, yada. We've already answered the list Kanban detail view. I think we kind of went through that. The inline editing. By the way, there is something I just noticed. If I click and drag this here, it seems to be firing off a detail view. So I'll find out about that. That's kind of interesting, because you really do, well, item order, maybe it's trying to update, well, I'll have to find out why that's happening, because we will show next week we handle that action when that occurs, and does what needs to be done to reflect that change. But we'll look into that there.
Awesome. All right, here is I got a couple of coding questions. So this first one says, if you have time, it says, can you show an example of looping through records of a list, and for each record have it run an event, like send an email or send an SMS or something like that?
Okay.
How would you go about doing code?
For a list or for data in the backend database? I'm assuming they want to do it in the user interface in the list.
Yeah, but since they're saying email and SMS, it sounds like having an internet connection is probably fine for that.
Yeah, so my default, and it's just because of my history and the amount I've used here, is I would add a button and I would do it in XBasic and an XBasic callback, meaning, right. Now, that said, you can loop through a list, but now you're using JavaScript. But again, what I would probably be doing is, after I go through each list item, I would probably trigger some action JavaScript to do something. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to
do them with a message box. Maybe have
I'll try and do theirs. So let me go
5 record list that does a callback, and
let's do. I'm just going to build a little transient message. My go-to there.
Just a message box. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, and we'll copy that. So maybe this is the action of send email or something like that. Now, the one thing about it is when you if you do the method I was telling about Ajax callback, you can actually read all the items that are in that list. So you can get a sort of really it's a pointer array to the back end that allows you to see that. So let's go ahead and do one thing. I want to try and show something really quick. So button, we'll go in here and we'll say run process. We'll just say there. We're in the weeds here. So for other people, you normally don't need to do this kind of stuff. Anyway, let's see. I'm trying to think how best to show this would be interesting here. You can just say an Ajax callback, and then you give the function name. And what will happen is it will send back all the information, including the members of this list. But that may be redundant, because if you already know what's in that list and it's in the database, then I would just walk through the database or your original data source and act on that. But it may be a situation where people have somehow modified that there. So the other option you can have is go to text mode, and in here, let's go ahead and go list, get value. So what I can do is get a, so I have right here list get value. So let me go ahead and copy this example and put it right here. So the first thing I do, and I'm just going to do this in pseudocode, is var list count is equal to, and then I can get the count of a list and put that in there. And then I just do a loop, and then I can just say, you know, and again, it would be, I don't do a lot of JavaScript, but you would just replace this. And so you would say, okay, this, you know, loop through this here. So I don't even know how to do a for loop, and I don't do it. I try to avoid JavaScript, you know, because Alpha does most of the work for me. But you would do a for loop here, and then you would just substitute each row. So you're going through the number of list counts, and then you could get the value of that information. And then you can, at this point, if you're doing something like an XMS, you can say insert the code to run that Ajax callback or to run some other action that you've created. And remember, so for instance, I'll go ahead and say this is not working right now. Let's hope. Go ahead and just comment this out. Okay, so I can create it. I'm going to go into my JavaScript actions, but let's say I want to have a new action, and I'll go SMS, and I'll go in here, and I will go ahead and say, for instance, you send SMS message using Twilio. And then we can use a named resource or put an explicit, you know, this is my account information and my number 800-555-1212. Now the to number, we'll just go ahead and put in, you know, notice I can pick it out from which is selected on the field, but I'm just going to say this is explicit. I'm going to put in the number 1-800-555-1111. Excuse me. Okay, and the message is hello. So I'm just kind of using action JavaScript here to do it. But what I'm going to do is go right in here. So this is my action JavaScript. So I could say, okay, run that action. But the problem is it's going to need to be customizable. So I can actually grab the JavaScript here, copy it. I'm going to save that just for messages. And now I'm going to go back into my process here, and I'm going to do my, you know, I'm just a pseudocode. I'm going to say for X equals, and you JavaScript people don't throw up on me, from there to list count, and then next, and I'm sure there's much more there. But in here, what I can do is I can just paste this right in here. So what I can do is I get the last name there, and then down here, notice, here's my message. Let's say I'm just putting the last name for the message. I can say L name, and then maybe the number. So I'm grabbing that data from the list. So here I'm going through each row and grabbing the data that I want to use, and then I'm just going to take that data right here and use it in this script that's right here. And so I'm kind of leveraging. So the trick here is that I let our friend Action JavaScript write all this code, and you notice it's even doing an Ajax callback kind of thing. And then you're just putting in and overriding these functions here. So that's how I would approach the program if I wanted to do it in JavaScript. If I want to do an XBasic callback, what I would do is go in here. I'm just going to go here and say Ajax callback. I'll just do this here. I'll copy this, go here, paste it here. Okay. So go there, save that. Now I have an XBasic function here, and I can grab the value of those list controls and put it in here. So hold on one second. Sorry there, I lost you for a minute. List.
Your screen
Bear with
is
me real
not
quick.
updated.
No, I put it on
oh, you're on
pause.
pause. Okay, you're looking through your
Yeah.
secrets. All right, no problem.
Okay. So let's see, I'm going to pause this for a second, continue looking for it here we are. Okay. And again, this is coding stuff, so bear with me. So I have a button on here that I'm going to run this process here called, and I'm going to call this Ajax callback. But the trick is I need to be able to go ahead and, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a Ajax callback into what's called a action JavaScript. So I'm going to say run callback is what it's going to be called. Okay. And let's go ahead and save this. We'll go back in here, and then I'm going to, and again, this is for folks that don't do it, go there. Okay. There we go. And test. Okay. And I'll paste this real quick and put it into the chat window so people can look at it. But this is how I do it. If I'm going to do it, let's say I want to take the items in this list control. Is my screen coming through okay? Let's say I want to take the list of these items and process them in a callback, which is how I would approach it here. So in order to do so, I went ahead and created my XBasic callback here called test. And so I go to controls here and I run this little call here, and I'll get rid of this and cut this here. So what I do is, first thing I do is this is a little piece of JavaScript that basically it gets a pointer to the Kanban list. Then what it does is it turns that into some JSON using JSON.stringify the data. So basically I'm extracting the information out of this list control. And then I'm building this, and this is a built-in function for Alpha. I'm basically just saying, okay, put that into a list data. And then what you want to do is then I'm doing the Ajax callback where I'm saying run that callback test with data to submit. And so what it's going to do is it's going to run that callback, but what it's going to do is pass this JSON along with it. So now I go back to my XBasic callback, and there's a little sample code right here. And I'm going to add that also in there, is the second part of it. And I know this is pretty detailed, but what we do is when this callback comes in, our data, that JSON data, is in this underscore list data information. So in the JavaScript, we grab the data out of the list control, package it up, and then send it back. And then what I do is I put it into a pointer and then convert it. So let me show you what it looks like here. So I'm going to put in a debug right here. And if I haven't screwed this up, I like just so that I have another statement over here. So I'll go back in, I'll run the working preview here. So when I click this button, run process, it's going to grab all this information and throw it into a piece of JSON and do the callback. And then I triggered the callback, and then you'll see here is my list data. So you can see this is all my data here. And it's got some extra stuff in here because I'm using Kanban. Notice it says navigate true, etc. But now what I can do is, now that I have this JSON, if I step and turn this into a pointer array, now you notice I have a list of items here. So here is row 2, amount, category, company. Go back up, go to row 3, amount, qualified, etc. So now I can just write a little loop that then extracts that data and then uses XBasic to send an email, to update a database, whatever it happens to be. So you can kind of do it either way. You can actually, and if you're more comfortable with JavaScript, you can go ahead and just use Alpha to help you write that JavaScript and then do it all client side, even though it is still going to be calling back to the server for doing things like that. Your other option is use this technique to extract the data out of the list control and then send that back to the callback, and then use this technique to parse all that data into a series of rows. And you'll notice the reason this looks a little strange is that you'll notice on line 1, one row of that list is actually the group information. So you'll notice it's grouping these. That's why, because I'm using Kanban. If you have a regular list, you're not going to see these kind of weird rows. You're just going to see all of the data rows that are in that list there. So I do hope, I'm sure this, like, certain people are like glazing over, but I hope that gave you enough pointers on how you can possibly attack that problem and do your list processing within it, either full client side, or you could do this where you run an XBasic callback and pass that information in.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Well, we are almost out of time, and I don't see any short questions anymore. I see some longer ones.
That's good, though. I mean, engage. I appreciate it.
But we would love to address those questions that we can't get to today. If you could send them to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. We can use them to formulate our upcoming webinars, but we'll also give you the answer before that. And we have a couple good ones that have to do with, for example, hiding buttons based on values in a list.
Oh, great.
And hiding columns in a list. Actually, can you even do that? Can you hide a column in a list control?
Yes, and in fact, you can do it dynamically too, which is really cool. So I'll make a note on that, and we'll put it on the list for, I guess we're going to stick into the list area for a while. So I will next week, I want to do a follow-up on Kanban to show maybe the database-oriented version of it. The other thing I want to do is answer the questions we had as far as inline editing there, and then also hiding columns in list control. And what's kind of cool about that, I want to show that too, because you can give your users the ability to hide the columns. So you can either do it programmatically, or you can allow the user to select what columns they want to see in a list control, which is really powerful, because then they can sort of tailor, you can use a dashboard technique to tailor the information to only what they want to see. So we're going to explore the Kanban a little bit more. I want to show you a few more aspects of that so you get a little more comfortable, but then I'll also cover some of these other deeper list issues as we go through. Great questions. Excellent.
Fantastic. Wow, thanks very much. For the person who asked the question about when will this video be ready, this video should be ready and posted by Friday of this week, if you're looking for it.
I guess they liked it. Of course, I'm going to be, where I looked bad, I'll probably,
doing some edits. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Look, it worked the first time.
It all worked. No syntax errors. I said.
Except for those losers that were hanging out with us live. Jeez, waste your time. Watch Dion stumble. Actually, we should rename that, like watchdionStumble.com, and it'd be great. No, thank you guys. We love you, and your questions help us. I mean, it helps us understand what you're looking for and what kind of content. And what's great is Sarah's online here, so she takes that and incorporates it into the documentation. So thank you guys. We really appreciate it, guys and gals.
Right. Dion, thanks very much for presenting. Thank you everyone for attending, especially those of you who asked questions and helped keep our session lively. If you do have more questions, again, you can send them to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. Thanks again, and we hope to see you next Wednesday at our next Wednesday webinar. Take care and goodbye.